Hey everyone, thanks for coming by to listen to this. This is actually part 3 of the Cammie Candy CreepyPasta series. So if you have not yet listened to the first 2, you may want to do that in order to understand exactly what's going on. If you have listened to the other 2, then welcome to part 3. I've been avoiding hotels, opting to sleep in the forests and in vacant houses and barns. I was asleep at this one barn, but I awoke to a man's southern drawl, beckoning me to open my eyes. I was at first comforted, but then I became startled by the fact that I was discovered. Fuck. I heard myself yelp, then get up with a start. The man was middle-aged, charming and kind. He welcomed me, despite me having crashed in his barn overnight. "Calm down, I ain't gonna hurt you," he chuckled as I trembled. Did he not recognize me? "Come on inside, you look hungry." He beamed as he got down from the hayloft I was laying in. Admittedly, I was skeptical of his kindness and was worried he planned on handing me into the authorities when my guard was down. He just invited me in, and I enjoyed a delicious meal of hash browns, eggs, bacon, and a light strawberry shortcake. I was in heaven. I had not eaten like this for a while now. I kept my eye on him. He was just enjoying his meal. "Must have been scary, huh?" he asked. I felt goosebumps running up my spine as I heard him say this. I questioned with a full mouth. "I saw you on the news. You're famous now." He chuckled and I swallowed hard. About to get up from my seat, he notices, then places a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Come on now, relax. I'm not going to turn you into the police." I hesitantly reclaimed my seat. Suspicion etched onto my face. He noticed my obvious curiosity and tensity, so I suppose he decided to put me at ease. "I've done my research and came to the fine notion that you weren't a danger to society, just a frightened person. Any of us would have done similar things, though not with our mouths alone." He chuckled as I awkwardly rubbed my arm. "Yeah, I surprise myself sometimes, but I murdered like 2 people. He nodded. "And both did something to deserve it. First a robber, then a thug. You're basically an anti-hero, kid." I chuckled nervously. "I'm not really. Bad guys or not, I don't think murder is something someone deserves as a punishment." He shrugged. "Oh, suit yourself. Oh, by the way, what's your name again?" I haven't really let us introduce ourselves to each other. I was startled but responded. "Quentin Zulfer." He chuckled. "All righty, Quinn. I'm Trevor Edicus. Nice to meet you." He shook my hand with a firm and rough hand. I managed to smile but winced. My hand has been kind of jacked up and I don't remember how they got that way, so this kindly man was lovingly pressing his rough hands into my tender wounds. He noticed I was dirty and offered me a shower. I happily took it. As you all have probably guessed, I'm a bit of a clean freak, and I like keeping myself tidy. I was fed, cleaned, and relaxed, but I still had my suspicions. He went out for a bit, so I had my things ready in case he tried to pull the rug out from under me, but instead he returned with some groceries. He asked for a hand, which I gave him in return for his kindness, but then he proceeded to hand me another disc. "Found this on the porch. Addressed to you," he said as he set it on his wood table. I stared at it, then shakily approached it. I knew what it was. I bit my lip as I read the red marker. Cammie Candy Cake Crusher. I shuddered, fearful for whoever would die if I watched this episode. The man asked me questions about it, and I answered to the best of my abilities, like what it was and what connections it had to me. I explained that I would probably sound psychotic, but he didn't seem to mind. He just listened intently. I told him everything. Come to find out from him that he was a retired detective living the farm life. That news startled me, and I became antsy. He waved that feeling off, telling me that he'd like to hear my story before he made any deductions. I nodded. Then he told me he wanted to watch the cartoon with me. I looked fearful, telling him that it was dangerous, but he laughed it off. He probably assumed I just had some overactive imagination, but this was serious. What if he got hurt watching this with me, or worse, killed? I begged him to reconsider, but after a bit I finally settled down, knowing it wasn't going anywhere. He's stubborn and he has already made up his mind, but just told me to eat my breakfast and get myself ready for nighttime, which I proceeded to do. He helped me pack up some more food and water, which I was grateful for. Cleaning up the kitchen together, this stranger had shown me more kindness in one day than I had gotten since I watched the DVD. That night I had some new clothes to wear, feeling refreshed, in the patterned long-sleeve shirt and the new pants. Old clothes he had planned on tossing had fit me like a charm, with a few adjustments. Then came time for me to fulfill my agreement to him. I gave one final warning before popping in the DVD, then sitting beside him. The episode began with Cammie and Edgar sitting underneath the title, Cammie Candy in Cake Crushers. They looked disturbed, upset that the show began. Cammie was pacing in her nightgown, stressed as Edgar ate breakfast. She was muttering under her breath, looking frightened as Edgar told her to seat herself and to relax. He swore it would be okay, but Cammie snapped at him. How could any of this be okay? I murdered several people, and now you've made yourself into an accessory of it. She grabbed her cotton candy hair, tugging at it. Edgar got up and took her hands. Cam, come on, stop stressing yourself out. It'll be okay. You're a good person, and I'm sure that if we get caught, that you'll be able to explain it. Cammie pulled her hands from him, then pinched his nose, but not in a painful way, rather than in a scolding manner. Edgar, you saw how people in town look at me now. The police are no better. Everyone thinks I'm a freak. They kept at this for a while until Edgar gave in and admitted defeat. It cut to Cammie tending to a garden on the side of the house. She seemed tired and lost. Trevor shifted beside me, confused and somewhat antsy. I kept in mind his actions as we continued watching. You know, on first glance, Cammie would be doing a normal everyday thing if it weren't for the pouring rain she was doing it in. Edgar burst outside to see her watering plants in the rain, then picked her up and carried her back in. She was irritated as she struggled to be released, but he refused. He kept her inside, drying her off while scolding her for leaving the house without him. Then they had an argument. They were stressed from what was happening, and it showed. Cammie eventually just broke down sobbing. Edgar held her close. Trevor looked curious at the scene before him. I was uneasy. I didn't trust this man completely, and watching this show with him didn't change that, though I had been grateful for his help. I picked at a button sewn into the corner of the shirt I was wearing to distract myself from these feelings. It came to a point where Cammie and Edgar were sitting together on the couch, Cammie explaining what she felt. It's like I'm not even the same person anymore. I feel like I can't control myself. How many more people have to die because of me? How many more people? She sobs sadly as he holds her close. You didn't mean to. It isn't your... Edgar began to say, but was cut off. It is my fault. I killed him. I don't remember how, and I don't want to know. I just wanted to stop. She sniffled, wiping tears from her eyes, as Edgar sighed and held her close. It'll be okay, Cammie. We'll get through this. Cammie didn't seem so sure. I rubbed my arm. I just felt sad this episode. This miserable feeling deep down like I wanted to cry. Trevor lightly nudged me with his elbow. Doesn't that sound similar to your situation? I looked down at my damaged hands, now bandaged up. He was right. Cammie and I shared very close similarities and similar issues. Then I started realizing how similar our situations were. We both killed through strong emotion. Didn't recall how exactly we did it, but we knew it was coming. We feel deep remorse for our actions, and we're both on the run. My heart started thrumming against my ribcage. Did this cartoon make me like her in a way? Did it go so far to have me relate with her that it made me live in her shoes? I was startled when we heard a squad of cop cars pull up to the front of the house. Trevor was immediately on high alert, going to lock the doors and try to pretend he wasn't home. Damn it. I kept watching the show. That's when my heart dropped. Cammie and Edgar had been watching something when police pulled up to the house, and a large number of them too. I connected the dots. Edgar went to lock everything down, same as Trevor. Same noises, same movements, same mannerisms. I felt my heart beat so fast, I worried it would burst out of my chest. The police called out to come out, or else they'd open fire and raid the house. Same way they did in the show. Trevor moved as Edgar moved, telling us they'd be back and they'd take care of this. But the moment they walked out the door, I jumped at the sickening sound of a gunshot. Cammie went to peek out the door to see Edgar's head, a mushy, cakey mess. She cried out and sobbed as she saw him. She ran to the back door with her things, then headed for the woods, booking it into the foggy forest again. She bumped into Salem, but before anything else could happen, the episode ended with a still image of them staring at each other, with the signature, "The End." I grabbed my ship before the police filed in and then booked it. Their men and dogs gave chase, but I had a hell of a head start. I lost them in the forest, running as fast as I could before I tripped over a gravestone and landed in front of a man in a long coat. He seemed to be managing the graveyard. He stared at me through a black surgical mask, and I suppose I will just have to watch the episode to see what happens with this one. He was friendly to me, though, a place to stay and food to eat. He wasn't curious, barely even speaking to me other than when we first met, and when he left me to my devices in his little home by the graveyard. The similarities between the cartoon and my life are freaking me out, but I have to keep going if I want to know what happens to me and the people around me. I'm scared, but at least this time I didn't kill anyone, but someone else was killed, and that miserable feeling in my heart is still painful. I've been having these nightmares where Cammie stares at me with those eyes she gets when she goes murder mode. She pulls them out of her head, then puts them in my eye sockets. I can see the world in a horrifying new light through those eyes. Everything looks like an eldritch horror. People look demonic and threatening. I try to pull the eyes out of my head, but they won't let go. It's like they root themselves into me to force me to see the way they see the world. Cammie would catch my attention, but through these eyes, she looked miserable and tired. She looked as though she is shackled. She proceeds to say, "Your eyes deceive you as they deceived others. Freedom can only be obtained if you free yourself of them." She would then begin to pull them out of me, but my insides came out with them as well. "Shed your human flesh and join the band. We're waiting for you." I would then wake up with her cryptic message echoing in my mind and the sweat trickling down my body. "We're waiting for you."